It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott's here. Mary Jo Foley's here. And we didn't do it earlier in the month. We should do it now. Paul and Mary Jo's predictions from Microsoft for 2020. Is Satya Nadella going to rename Windows? I'll give you a hint. Probably not. And mark your calendars. Some Microsoft dates to remember. All coming up next on Windows Weekly. Windows Weekly comes to you from the TWiT Lastpass studios. Securing every access point in your company doesn't have to be a challenge. Lastpass unifies access and authentication to make securing your employees simple and secure. Check out lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. Episode 656, recorded Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020. The wide world of nose scrolling. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by Expressvpn. Protect your online privacy with one click. It's that easy. For 3 extra months free with a 1-year package, go to expressvpn.com/windows. And by Melissa. Bad data happens to good companies. That's why 10,000 businesses count on Melissa for clean, reliable address data. Get started today with 25,000 records cleaned, free. That's a $75 value at melissa.com/twit. And by Lastpass. Lastpass is a personal password manager and identity solution for businesses that helps secure everywhere you work and live. One password gets you in, and LastPass takes care of the rest. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more. It's time for Windows Weekly with the always acerbic Paul Thurrott.
Ooh.
And the misanthropic, because you said you don't like people, Mary Jo Foley. I'm trying to new words.
Hold on a second. Mary Jo never said that.
I didn't.
People say that about Mary Jo.
Right.
It's different.
I do hate people, but I didn't say it myself until now.
Yes.
Hey, I'm a misanthrope and proud of it.
I'm just kind of a recluse. I don't know if that's the same thing.
Yes, it is. Why would you be a recluse? You don't want to see people.
But I think by virtue of being a recluse, I now am attuned to not seeing people, and I don't like the experience when I do.
Wow.
I love people. It's the individuals I can't stand.
Exactly.
Right. Like, I love going to the gym. It's just that everyone there is terrible.
Oh,
Terrible.
Don't ever go to the gym. Don't ever
It's the
go
worst.
to the gym. Man, there's always that one guy who's got 180 pounds on the bench press and is talking on the phone.
Oh,
Just
so it's
sitting
funny you
there.
say that. This is what I witnessed today. I have the gym plays music.
Yeah.
The room behind us where they have a class is pumping music.
Yeah,
So
oh
you
yeah,
can-
really
those things
loud.
Are fighting, they're
Yeah.
fighting each other.
Yep.
I have my in-ear noise-canceling headphones. I'm listening to a podcast, but I can still hear over all of this sound someone yelling.
Oh, no.
And I'm looking around like, what's going on? Is someone yelling at someone? And there's a guy, a huge muscly guy with over-the-air headphones on, yelling into the air. I took off my headphones. I was listening to him. He was having a phone conversation. And because he was noise-canceling the gym, he didn't understand how loud he was.
Oh, my God.
So he's just standing there screaming into the middle of the gym like a crazy person.
Yikes.
This
is why I stay at home, guys. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Stay
And I
home.
witness this, and you're like, what is going on? Why do I leave the house?
Stay home and listen to Windows Weekly. That's the best
right.
thing. We're nice
the
people,
ticket.
and we won't take up the weight bench.
We were, yeah, right. I promise to be very sparing on the weight bench.
Yep. I did introduce Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, all about Microsoft.com, Thurrott.com. I think because we didn't do this. Usually we do this earlier in the year.
Yeah.
We didn't really do our predictions for 2020.
We did not.
So this would be a good time to do that. Do you want to alternate as you've done in the past, or do you want to do it by topic?
No,
What do you want to do?
we can just, I don't know.
We could do topics and then both kind of weigh in.
Okay.
All right.
That's good.
All right.
All righty.
Well, let's start with Windows.
Why not?
What's coming for H1 and H2 2.0?
Yeah. We already know that, right? Like, so we know there's going to be 2 updates this year, 20H1, 20H2. We think the 20H2 is going to be very similar to what they did last year. So more like a cumulative update, very small.
Yep.
And 20H1 is done, basically. It's Windows 10 2004, but they're going to wait until March or April to start rolling that out.
How big is that? Is that a big feature update?
No. It's not
So
that big.
I guess the way to say it is a feature update, but it's not a particularly big update in the sense
So have
that
they run out of ideas?
No, but you know how Office kept getting new features and more, and people were like, how many new features do you need in Office?
Yeah.
Right?
I can't tell you how many times I've had that conversation with like Kirk or some people over in Office 365 or now Microsoft 365, where it's like, guys, seriously, like enough.
Right.
Every month was this gigantic blog post with feature, and then at the bottom there were links to more blog posts about specific features on iOS, on Android, whatever. And it was like, I don't know how anyone could keep track of this.
I know. Yep.
But it does seem they still do that, by the way. But it seems like it's slowed down somewhat.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's still some things we're trying to figure out how they show up, like Windows 10X. So we know that's going to be built into devices this coming year, like the Surface Neo.
And a bunch of other devices, which is kind of interesting. Like we finally got our first peek at some of those at CES.
Yep. And today we heard a little bit about some of the way they're going to start rolling that out in SDK form with emulators and all that very soon, like starting with the Duo phone, but then going to Neo like in the next couple weeks.
Right.
So, but what we don't really know is how are insiders going to test that? I mean, is it going to be like a separate branch they test, or is it just going to be built into the other insider, like every regular insider builds?
Into 10X, you mean? Or how are they going to test 10X?
Yeah.
Yeah,
they said by using the insider channel, but okay. Right?
Well, this has happened before. Remember, we got Windows 10S, and there was no testing of that.
True.
And there's a pretty good chance that's what we're looking at here. I mean, the difference is we are going to get that SDK, and the SDK is going to have a Hyper-V emulator. And that emulator will be updated over time. And so we'll have a chance to, at least just as individuals, if we want to go look at the thing.
Yeah.
But I would be surprised if 10X was let into the insider program. I know. I guess the asterisk to that, kind of as I'm talking through it, there are going to be devices that ship sometime during the year that will support Windows 10X.
Right.
But will ship with Windows 10 Pro. Now, it would be interesting if those people would have the opportunity to test it 10X. I bet they don't do it. That's my guess.
Right. So like that Lenovo that they showed off at CES. So it'll ship initially with Windows 10 Pro and then later with Windows 10X. So that's
and not to get, I guess, right off on all the developer stuff, but what the heck? They spoke briefly and vaguely today about this coming SDK for Windows. They call it an SDK for Windows 10, right? Yeah. And that it will support these dual screen experiences on both native Win32, which I take to mean everything Win32 from C, C++ to WinForms to WPF as well as UWP. Yep. That suggests to me that you could write an app that targeted this that would run on Windows 10 Pro. And the very existence of Pro devices that have dual screens says to me that these things will be supported in both places. So,
I don't know.
Yeah. It's just a guess. We don't have it yet.
Yeah, we don't know that part yet. But yeah, so that's kind of what we think is going to happen with Windows. And then Paul put in the notes something kind of funny. So I guess there was some kind of private press meeting last week with some journalists in Microsoft is that where this happened?
And somebody asked him about Windows.
Yeah, somebody asked him about Windows, which never happens, right? He jokingly said, what if we
aside from the joke, which is, Edge, I assume he was joking. Well, because he sees everything, the future of the company's Azure.
Yeah, right.
So what's the Windows role in this? Windows is one of many edge devices, as Microsoft calls them. Right. Mobile devices, IoT devices, et cetera. He says, sometimes we say, should we just rename Windows to Azure Edge? And I hope he was kidding.
What?
That would be terrible.
Joking.
Yeah,
it would be Azure Credge.
Azure Credge. But he also
was kidding.
spoke to.
I think.
I think
it was kidding.
No, it was a joke. It's a good joke. It's a funny joke.
But it shows you kind of how they want people to think about Windows. They want to think about it as an edge platform in their intelligent cloud.
That's how Nadella thinks of it.
But it's worth reading what he actually said, because he also spoke about how the same people developing Azure are developing Windows, and that there actually is some sense to this, that they're on the same schedule, it's the same team, it's the same leadership, et cetera.
We knew this, but now that you mention it, it sounds a little odd.
Yeah.
Isn't that, they seem so different. They seem like disparate products.
Yeah,
like saying the same people doing WordPad are doing Notepad.
Or doing Paint.
Paint.
But like just things that don't seem to go together. Mary Jo mentioned the two releases they're going to ship this year, right? The 2004 and 20H2, and there's obviously some understanding that this release schedule is based on the release schedule for Azure, and that these things line up, and that makes some kind of a sense. But I think the thing I struggle with, and I assume other people do as well, is just this, and Mary Jo raised this a little bit, this notion of, well, what are we testing exactly? Like, because in addition to the back end stuff, which follows whatever schedule it kind of has, there's all this, what I think of as front end stuff, the user experience stuff. And that stuff, you could probably plug it onto almost any version of Windows 10 that was supported at the time, but they are typically associated with some version of Windows. 3D Paint shipped in some version of Windows, or whatever the feature was. And now we're testing features that may or may not make the next version. So there are going to be features that we test this year that don't show up in 20H2. They'll move forward to 21H1 or whatever. Yeah. And that kind of raises the question about, what is this thing that's on my hard drive exactly? Like, what am I testing? Because before, when you were in the Insider program, you could say, well, I'm testing Windows 10 version, whatever. That's what this is. And now these things seem to be treated separately, which I guess, technically, of course, they always were. But it's not really clear. I'm still confused by this. I don't know why I have such a block.
Yeah. But what I would suggest for thinking about this. So
moving to the Mac.
No, I would not suggest that. They've kind of been doing this in a way for a while, right? Like, they always were hedging, like, over the past couple of years. Like, even though we're telling you this is maybe going to come out in the next version of Windows, it might not. So this is, I think, is just them formalizing that. And I think a lot of the things you are testing will be in the next Windows. It will be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Most of it, almost all of it. Possibly all of it. Yeah, for sure.
So I think don't get too tangled up in it may or may not appear in the next Windows. Most everything will, and things that either they miss the time frame or they decide based on testing that it's not not a good feature.
Let me frame this in a way I think that will make sense to people. You can't do this to compulsive people. You were doing something a certain way.
Yeah.
And now you just throw it in a blender.
Yeah.
We don't like that.
I know.
What do you think's in the Insider program?
I know.
It's people like me.
I know. Not people like me who are like, whatever.
Yeah, right. You have a very casual attitude about this.
I do. Maybe a little too cavalier for your life.
Cavalier, Mary Jo Foley. Yes. Now we have an adjective for you.
Yes.
The cavalier.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't think it's that different. I just think they're formalizing their out here, which is it might not make it into the product. We might decide this feature's terrible, or we may not finish it in time. I think that's all they're really doing.
I'll just say this to Microsoft. If you thought that was going to end the complaining, you were wrong. You were wrong.
All right. We're done with Windows. That's enough to say.
Enough.
All right.
Let's talk about Credge, which, by the way, this is what happens in our show notes. I put in Credge, Paul changes it to Edge, then I change it back to Credge.
Right.
Because
and then I give up because Mary Jo, when it comes to it, Mary Jo beats rock, paper, and scissors. And
I do.
So is this particular way of typing it your compromise?
This is exactly right. This was the Treaty of Versailles.
It looks like
that we arrived at
like a chemical formula. It's parenthesis, open parenthesis, CHR, close parenthesis, Edge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so Credge, back to Credge.
Yep.
Back to Credge.
We know they're going to be refreshing the final build that just came out every 6 weeks. They've hinted that the two biggest features that people are complaining about missing favorites and history sync are going to be done fairly soon and added to the product.
Right.
A Linux version could happen in 2020, maybe not. They kind of hedge back and forth on that, right? They tantalize people and say, yeah, we're going to do Linux. And then when you ask them, they say, there's so many different Linuxes. Which one should we do? So then you're like,
Yep.
But ARM64 is going to come this year, for sure.
I bet we see Linux. And
you do?
Yeah, this is also, I think we do. And this is a developer thing, but also maybe of note is Microsoft is submitting web standards for dual screen devices for web development, and wants to see PWA natively support dual screen functionality on both Android and Windows, and presumably thus on anywhere, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Agreed. What else to say about Credge?
Well, it's incomplete, right? There's the missing features that we'll definitely see this year.
I think the way somebody said this to me on the Credge team, I forget who told me this, but they said, you guys are so used to us when we talk about Windows thinking about, will it show up this year or next year or in 2 years? When it comes to the browser, we're thinking like next week or next month. Like their time frame is much more speedy, right? So just because it's missing something now, or they promise something or commit to something, it doesn't mean, in 2021 or 2022. It means probably in the next couple months, right?
This is actually a huge deal, right? I mean, we used to complain that we would only get a new version of what's now called Legacy Edge every time Microsoft shipped a new version of Windows 10. So that was two times a year. But even that schedule, if you go back and look at the IE schedule over time, not the very beginning, because obviously they were very aggressive 1 through 3, but if you look at versions 4 through whenever they got to 11 or 12, those things happened over really extended time periods. Yeah. So even the Edge time frame, the Edge schedule, the original Edge schedule was pretty aggressive compared to the way things used to be, but not aggressive enough given the way the web is going. And so this schedule is obviously the same as the schedule for Chrome, but for Microsoft, they've never, other than again, right at the beginning of IE, have never developed a browser at this speed before. So they're acting like, I'm sure they're very
it helps a little bit that Google did some of the work.
It helps a lot, for sure. Oh, no, that's, I'm sure, the only thing that makes it possible, right? But it's a big deal. I think that's a big deal.
Agree.
And it's very pretty. That's what Steve Gibson says.
Pretty.
It's very pretty.
It is. It's nice.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make it my only browser so far.
Really?
Doing it fairly successfully.
Brave of you. Are you using it on
Windows?
Android? Oh, okay.
No, not on Android.
You're not using it on Android, really? We'll get you, Mary Jo.
I should, as long as I can search using Google and not Bing. I think I can do it. Yeah. So I should try it.
My son saw the Edge icon on my phone over Christmas, and he said, he's like, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, that's Microsoft Edge." And he just laughed and said, "Of course it is." And then he walked away laughing.
Oh, you're so old. Pops.
I know.
I was confused by the,
Yeah, I was trying to explain to my mom the browser thing again because this comes up all the time. And I'm like, Mom, open your browser. I don't know what that is.
What's the browser? Oh, you
my
mean the
email?
internet?
No. Right. And so then I go, see the thing at the bottom of your screen? She goes, that thing that looks like the letter C? I'm like, yep. That's internet. That's Microsoft Edge. She goes, why is it a C? I'm like, yeah, I know.
It's not a C, it's an E, but it looks like
fancy E.
It's a fancy E.
It's a wave. It's the wave of new Edge users.
It is. Look at you.
It's
good.
Yeah, a wave is maybe a
taking
little
over the internet.
Grandiose. Maybe just like a little ripple. A ripple of new Edge users.
Did I step in something wet? Oh, that's it.
Let's take a little break as we continue our walk up memory lane through the predictions of 2020. But first, a word from our sponsor, ExpressVPN, a must install. It's part of my now new system install scripts is put ExpressVPN on everything, Mac, Windows, Linux, iOS, Android. ExpressVPN protects your online security. You wouldn't want to use the internet at a coffee shop without running ExpressVPN. I mean, honestly, let's be honest. or a hotel or anywhere, any public internet. But some people even use it at home because it protects your privacy from your internet service provider. And there's a lot to be said about that. But more than protecting your security and privacy online, ExpressVPN can also help we were talking about TV a minute ago, take your TV watching to the next level by unlocking movies and shows that are only available in other countries. For instance, we're talking about Netflix. You have Netflix in the U.S., but did you know that in the U.K. there's every Doctor Who episode and a lot of Star Trek episodes? You can't get them in the U.S. If only you could be in the U.K. Oh, you can. All you got to do is push that one button startup for ExpressVPN. And instead of taking the default server, which is the one closest to you, because ExpressVPN has almost 100 servers in almost every country of the world, you can say, I want to merge in the UK today. Then when you fire up Netflix, it says, oh, welcome to the UK. Here's what you can watch. It doesn't just work in the UK. It works everywhere. ExpressVPN, want to watch anime? Lots of anime. Japanese Netflix. And it works with every streaming service too, by the way. Hulu, BBC iPlayer, YouTube, you name it. Just one more great reason to have ExpressVPN in your tool belt, in your utility belt right here. Go to expressvpn.com/windows right now, and you can get an extra 3 months when you subscribe for a year. That brings the price below $7 a month. Yeah, and yes, I know you can get a cheaper free VPN, but it's not going to be ExpressVPN. For one thing, if they're not charging you, they're making money somehow because it's expensive to run a VPN service, probably by selling your information. So there goes your privacy. Or I've seen this happen, inject ads into your stream. So you get more ads than you would otherwise. Not ExpressVPN. And ExpressVPN has been audited by independent third parties. They live up to their privacy policy. That means no logging. They don't keep track of what you're doing online. In fact, they can't. Their trusted server technology means when you log in, a VPN server is spun up. You have your session. As soon as you end your session, it's spun down, and at no time can it write to the hard drive. It's a virtual VPN server. That means your privacy is 100% protected. ExpressVPN. Get that great deal right now if you go to expressvpn.com/windows. An extra 3 months free. Support the show, Windows Weekly. Watch what you want. Protect yourself. By the way, I checked with Netflix when they told me this. Netflix said, yeah, that's fine. The only reason we don't say we say don't use a VPN is because most VPNs are so slow. Not ExpressVPN. You can watch HD no problem. And I know because I did it. It works beautifully. expressvpn.com/windows. Thank you, ExpressVPN, for supporting the show. And thank you, Windows Weekly listener, for using that special address. That way they know you heard it here. On we go with our walk up memory lane. iOS and Android. What is Microsoft? What's going to happen this year in that sphere with Microsoft? They do some pretty good apps already.
They do. They've kind of hinted there'll be more apps, especially
what's missing?
Apps for first line workers.
Oh.
The people without desks. There'll probably be more of those for both
there's a
platforms.
lot missing.
Yeah. I never think there's a lot missing, and then they come out with something, and it's like, oh yeah, more scheduling apps, more this, more that.
Right. Yeah. We need another to-do app. It's been a few months.
Yeah. And then, on your phone, there'll be, I think, a lot more things happening. So your phone is the app that you can run to connect your Windows 10 desktop to your phone. And on Android, they're doing a lot of things. And there's a hint right now that the next thing might be clipboard copy and paste between your Android phone and your Windows 10 desktop. Ooh. That may arrive as a Your Phone feature soon.
Nice. I got to say, do you use this app? I'm really
I've been using it a lot.
Impressed by it. Yeah, it's really nice. And it's gotten to the point where my phone will buzz because I get a notification. And by the time I'm done registering that it happened, I look down and I see the notification on my screen and I can type in response to a text message or whatever. I know the Mac guys over there going, yeah, we've had that for 5 years or whatever. But it is it's just a wonderful thing if you're running Android.
If you're running Android,
running
right? iOS has almost nothing, right?
You can get your photos basically.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's not very good.
No, but on Android, it's quite good and getting better.
It's amazing.
It's one of those things when they first announced it, I'm like, yeah, I might use that sometimes, but probably never. And then now I use it all the time.
Yeah.
It's just handy not to
really
have to
useful.
open your phone. Like, oh, what's going on? Yeah. So, yeah, I think lots more to come with your phone and Windows 10. Otherwise, on mobile, I don't know. What else? Can you think of anything? Well, gaming. I didn't really think about that until now, but support for this cloud streaming, right?
Yeah.
On these devices.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the thing I keep looking at, and I feel like this is pretty fleshed out, is on mobile devices with larger screens like iPad Pro, some of the Office apps are turning into pretty full-featured apps like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And that's obviously kind of a weird thing for Windows guys, but it is interesting to watch those apps kind of mature on mobile because, you know, they started from scratch with them and they built core functionality and then they're kind of building them up. And I think those are really interesting examples of how mobile can turn into something, you know, very full-featured for most people. It's not quite there yet, but those are pretty close.
Yeah. So yeah, mobile, more of the same. I think.
Mobile.
Yeah.
Mobile is almost as good as cloud when it comes to
Yeah.
Satya Nadella.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Will there be new Surface? I know we're going to see the Duo and
Yeah.
Well, maybe we're going to see.
Well, the
that
question
through
is, but is that going to be all we see? Right.
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 I think the devices that were revved last fall are probably not going to be revved this year, but there's the Surface Hub 2X that Mary Jo mentions here in the notes. There's Surface Go, which is going to be 2 years old, I think, this year. Or is it 2 or 3 years old? 2 years, I guess.
Like 2 or 3, yeah.
2 or 3. And Surface Book, right, which is at least 2 years old.
Oh,
now.
yeah. And Surface Pro, there were these rumors that Microsoft was going to completely redo the Surface Pro. My guess is what people meant was make it look more like the Surface Pro X, right?
That's inevitable, for sure. Whether it happens this year or not, we'll see. But yeah, it's absolutely possible to make a device like that running Intel. No doubt about it. It probably won't have the same battery life. But actually, Surface Pro X doesn't necessarily have great battery life either. So
yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
what do you think on the Hub,
list,
though? Do you think
the one on that list I'm the most skeptical about is that 2X?
Which is interesting because 2 years ago this spring, if I'm getting my timing right, is when they announced that product. And then they kind of backstepped on, well, we'll have the 2S and the 2X, I think 2S and 2X, right? That was what they called them.
Right.
And the lower end version is the one that will be running the old software. And we haven't heard much. But I wonder if this isn't tied to the 10X schedule.
I know. I kind of wonder that now too. Yeah. Because the reason we both are thinking that is, so Windows 10X, which is what is going to run on the Neo and the Duo and other clamshell laptops at some point, we think there's a chance that could run on even more platforms, at least the core of it, which is Windows Core OS. And the tips that I keep getting are, Windows Core OS, it's running later than they thought. And so until that's ready, I don't think they can come out with the Surface Hub 2X.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, they haven't even come out yet, I don't think, with the promised 84-inch Surface 2S. So they always say they can't meet demand on these really large screen conferencing devices.
Yeah.
And maybe they really can't, and maybe there really is a backlog. So I don't know. I just feel like we haven't heard anything at all.
Haven't heard anything. That's
right?
What's weird. So we do this a lot on the show, but it is a reality of the Microsoft release schedule that for whatever reason, in this case, they typically reveal information about it at build or around build. Yeah. And I remember back when build was still in San Francisco, the first gen Surface Hub, we did some stuff there. I think it was there. Yeah. And it doesn't matter, but whatever. And then, of course, more recently in Seattle. But I wouldn't be surprised if we heard something at that show. Yeah. It's just a long time to go without anything. That Surface event came and went in the fall with no real mention of Surface Hub at all.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of weird because what we've been guessing, and we'll get to this a little bit when we talk about all the show schedules, but usually what happens is there's a spring hardware event for Microsoft, right? And that's where you would think you would hear about the 2X, Surface Hub 2X, which would mean like April this year.
Yep.
It's not impossible that this comes out then, but I don't know. I feel like we would have heard something, even a rumor, something.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, there's the developer SDK for Windows 10 X that isn't out yet, but that might provide some clues about whether that is a hub target. And that wouldn't surprise me. It makes more sense to me for that thing to run 10X than for Microsoft to have yet another version of its OS. Although, especially now that they're adding the ability for people to sign into it. I mean, one of the things in the beginning was this notion that you could kind of, it was like this specialty kind of a device. And obviously it still is in a way, but I think once you start letting people sign in, I don't know, maybe they don't need another derivative of Windows just for that one device.
I know, right? Because right now Surface Hubs run a different version of the OS, right? I think it's called like Surface Hub OS or something like that. So the question is, can they come out with something that's the common core, like Windows Core OS, and then just has a UI that looks and feels a lot like either, what's coming on the Neo and the Duo, something very simple, or has some kind of a custom UI for that larger screen device.
Right.
We don't know. That's a big we don't know on that one, but yeah.
Yes, it is. And then you also have a note about Surface Go 2 maybe running ARM. Surface Go 2.
That's a rumor right now that could happen.
That's a legit rumor.
In the sense looked like the Go wasn't going to be the ARM.
I think they wanted it to be ARM originally. Yeah. And it just wasn't there yet.
Ready.
The first 2-gen ARM chipsets for Windows were terrible.
Yep.
One of the things that happened last year, in addition to learning about the 8CX, which is Microsoft's custom version of the Snapdragon for Windows, is that there are midline Snapdragon processors aimed at Windows as well. And that kind of makes sense for a device like this. So, we'll see.
Yeah. We will see on that one for sure.
How do you, just off tangent a little bit, but how do you like your Surface laptop these days, Mary Jo? You still happy?
I love it.
You love it.
It's still fantastic.
Good.
I love how converted you are. Yeah. Like you're going to be like a Surface snob now. Like, oh, you're still rocking a 16:9 display like a caveman.
It's funny. So Windows Central did their 3-month review of the Surface Laptop 3, and there's a line in there that says, even Mary Jo Foley likes it.
Wow.
Because I'm known as such a Surface hater. Every time a Surface came in, I was like, yeah, it's all right. I would never buy it. But yeah. And then this one came and I was just like, this is the perfect laptop. I love it.
Oh my God. Well,
I know.
That's good. Yeah. It is a fantastic laptop.
Yay. All right.
It really is.
Moving on. Office 365.
Yeah, so this could be a very big year for Office 365 in terms of the consumer side of the house, because last tip I have is the redone version of Office 365 for consumers, which currently is going by the name Office 365 Life, could be announced at Build or around that time. This is where that weird Teams for Life thing that we've talked about on the show a couple times shows up. So this could be a version of Teams aimed at prosumers to be used in the home, I guess, with other family members.
We're like a team.
We're a team.
We barely speak to each other, but Paul brings up an interesting point in the notes, though. Is this really just going to be like a renaming of Office 365 to Microsoft 365, like a rebrand of that brand? And I've had tips saying yes, but think about this. If they do that, this gets super confusing, right? Because I think they're going to still have to sell Office 365 not as part of the integrated Microsoft 365 offering, like just as a standalone thing. Ditto with Intune, right? And ditto with Windows, obviously. Oh, sure, for sure. To consumers, especially. Is that what you mean?
Right.
Yeah,
so actually, even to businesses, too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think that makes sense is if you look at Office 365 on the business side and the commercial side today, and you compare it to Microsoft 365, the Microsoft 365 SKUs are supersets of what you see on the Office 365 side. So If you just kind of rebranded that whole thing, it would still make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so an Office 365 Personal and Home rebranded to Microsoft 365 would still make sense. It's just a name, you know.
Okay.
And I guess this gets into the argument. It does give them the option to put other stuff in there, and you can think of some consumer stuff that you might get in there.
Yeah.
Like, you know, OneDrive, for example, on the consumer side is not really an Office product per se. You know, it's kind of a Microsoft thing. It's part of Windows. And so I don't think it is as crazy as it sounds. And then the argument there is whether or not Microsoft or Office is the better brand. And Office is obviously kind of generic, but it is associated with Microsoft and productivity.
Yeah.
Is the Microsoft brand better?
Yeah, I think they think it is. Like they're rebranding everything Microsoft something, right?
I think you can make a case for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious what else is in that service when they announce it, Office 365 Life. So we're pretty sure it's going to be Office 365, like similar to Home and Personal type SKUs, right? And then I keep hearing like some new features specific for consumers around security. So like a password manager could be part of this.
Yeah.
But what else, right? I know.
Don't get in that business, Microsoft. We already have a very
there's
good
some good
quality
ones.
password manager that we recommend as we broadcast from the Lastpass studios.
Maybe a VPN product or
some more security,
a food delivery
focus.
service.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, it's not a fear because when any operating system does stuff like that, my Apple has a password manager in it, but it's it only
it's
works
not what
on
you
Mac.
want.
It only works on Apple.
Right.
Well, it's fine. It's just limited.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
And anytime Microsoft does that, there's always room for a third party.
Yeah.
Even Apple lets, I don't know on the Mac, but I know on iOS you can replace the Apple password manager with your own.
Right. Yes, that's true.
So even in a really limited,
not everybody's going to use keychains.
Yeah.
So I was just being silly.
Yeah, but a lot of people are concerned. There's two concerns I keep hearing. One is, are they going to have gaming in there too? Like, is gaming subscription going to be part of this thing? No.
Right. I think of this. You got to, gaming at Microsoft is Xbox, and Xbox is the one part of Microsoft that I feel is like really kind of separate from Microsoft, and the rest of Microsoft really coalesces around this notion of productivity, like almost all the rest of it. And Microsoft 365, I feel like they already have, if anything, too many subscriptions on the Xbox side for consumers. And
Game Pass, blah, blah.
Yeah, there's some stuff about that later on. But and there's more coming, right, with xCloud. I mean, it's crazy. Like, there's a lot of stuff. Integrating that into Microsoft or Office 365 would be very confusing. And there's a lot of people that want that storage in OneDrive or the Office productivity apps and want nothing to do with gaming.
Yeah.
So they'd have to make that a separate bundle.
Separate thing.
It's like it's like people asking for Apple to put all their subscription into an Uber service of some kind. I mean, people have been asking for Microsoft to do something like that for a long time too.
Mm-hmm. The other concern that comes up every time is Windows going to be in there? And maybe, but I don't think it makes sense to put Windows in there, right?
No.
Even though so this is where the branding gets muddy, right? So if you call it Microsoft 365 something, on the business side, that means Windows, Office, and Intune. On the consumer side, will that mean Windows, or will it just mean like Windows tools, like a password manager, right? Because you can't put Windows subscription in there because consumers invariably, I can't say invariably, there are some people who still build their own PCs, but almost everybody gets Windows on a new PC. Right? You're not going to be
here's why you
licensing
can't do it. A PC purchased by an individual that comes with, let's say, Windows 10 Home, and you make Windows 10 Pro, I guess, part of the subscription. So you upgrade. It's a one-time thing. You don't go back from that. Yeah. And then next year, they're like, well, I'm not going to pay for the subscription anymore. You can't revert that PC to Home. It's not Pro is not an ongoing benefit. It's a one-time upgrade. So it kind of doesn't make sense. But again, like I said, if you if you just rebrand Office 365 to Microsoft 365, you don't have to worry about this because there will be versions of Microsoft 365 on the commercial side that don't come with Windows, don't come with the management stuff, don't even come with the apps in some cases, right? The Office apps.
Right.
And maybe more to the point, most of the people who'd be buying this as consumers don't have any knowledge of what's available
on the business
commercial
side.
Anyway, so who cares?
Right. They've never heard of Microsoft 365.
Right.
Like if you say that to normal people, they're like, what's that? Right.
The first version will have to say powered by Office 365.
Yeah.
Like when they switched over to Windows 2000 from NT.
Right. Yep.
Because people are going to be confused.
Yeah. It's going to be good times for us trying to explain this. Whenever it's SKU stuff or like, here's how they're rebranding this and not this, or adding this SKU that's going to be priced with this, it's always like, oh boy, here we go.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're doing our predictions, their predictions. I've got nothing to say here. For 2020 for Microsoft, continuing on to Azure.
Oh, wait, I have one more Office one.
Yes.
This is going to be big this year. Project Cortex that we heard about at Ignite. This is their knowledge management service that they're going to make a premium service in Office 365 and / Microsoft 365 for business customers. So that means, when you're using, say, Outlook, and you say, I need to send an email to Joe, a contact card will come up telling you all the things about this person, Joe, who you want to send the email to, where they are in the org chart, what their responsibilities are, what projects they're working on in common with you. All this kind of information will bubble up so that you'll be more prepared to write something or communicate in some way using all this knowledge that you have from the knowledge graph and the Microsoft graph. How this actually is implemented and privacy controls and compliance and all this, that's all TBD because this isn't even available in preview form for almost anybody yet. I think it's in private preview for very, very few. But they're promising this the first half of the year to be out so that people can start kicking the tires. And I think it's going to be a pretty big deal. It's not going to be another, how Teams became like the app that they held up as, this is the thing in Office 365 that you really are going to care about. Cortex isn't going to be an app like that. It's going to be more integrated throughout all your other existing Office 365 apps, from the way I've heard it described.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that could be a big one for this year.
Get ready for Cortex. And now
Azure. Yeah. People ask me all the time, what are you predicting Microsoft's going to do with Azure in the coming year? And that's a super hard one to predict because it's not like Windows where like little hints leak out to us. It's like nobody drops you a hint that says, you know what they're going to announce next week? This new service in Azure. Nobody ever does that, right? So
right.
That'd be awesome, though. If you know something like that and you want to send it to me, I'm right here. But yeah,
Mary Jo, what was it that woman said about tech reporters?
You're grooming again.
I'm
grooming.
I'm grooming the listeners.
You're using this platform to.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain categories.
Meg
Whitman.
Yeah.
There's certain categories you can bet on. Not Meg Ryan. You can be sure there's going to be more security services, more AI services, more bot/conversation services. That's kind of easy to say. Like they'll have new things in all those categories. More big deals, like they've been signing all these $10 million plus deals lately for Azure. So they'll be talking more about like customer case studies, customers who they call partners. And they're starting to talk more about multi-cloud with Azure. They did this at Ignite where they started talking about Azure Arc, which is their management product that'll let you manage your workloads, not just on Azure, but also on AWS and Google and other clouds, even on-prem as well. So yeah, you'll hear all those themes bubble up, but in terms of like tangible products or leaks, I don't think we have a lot on Azure. Right. Just more services, more geographies, more everything. More highlighting
and of course Windows will be called Azure Edge.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. I think in some ways, the big news around Azure this year might end up being how it performs against AWS based in part on pushback against Amazon, right? There does seem to be this growing consensus that Amazon, is not necessarily trustworthy. And I think this is something Microsoft could push on the cloud end, just like it could push on the client end, more than it does.
Yeah. What do you mean, like a Gmail man, except for AWS?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
It's been a good strategy for Apple.
Yeah.
The only other company that could reasonably pursue it would be Microsoft. And
it's Microsoft. Yeah, exactly.
Apple doesn't really have an enterprise play, so this is your opportunity.
Yeah, they definitely are trying to uphold themselves as like the privacy champion with Azure and the compliance champion. Basically, we're not going to say AWS or Google, but we're better than those guys on that front. They also, especially with AWS, hold themselves up as saying, at least we're not competing in the vertical market segment that you're in.
That's
like
right.
Self-driving cars.
Yeah, enterprise might care more about that.
They care a lot about that.
What's
may
Mark
not
Penn
care
doing
about
these
privacy
days,
that much, but get Mark Penn in here.
Yeah, throw some sulfur down on the floor, light a match. And
I think he's writing Hillary Clinton's lines these days, actually.
Puts his cape over his face.
If you're a retailer, do you really want Amazon to be providing your cloud
that's
service?
a really interesting question. Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, that's one of the big antitrust issues with big tech these days. One of the biggest ones. It's companies that have no choice but to sell through Amazon, and they get strong-armed by this company that, you must have seen the stuff last week. Was it the pop? What do they call those things? Those little handles for the phones.
The pop socket guy was he's bitching.
Amazon is like demanding certain pricing ranges, and they're selling knockoffs from China in the store right alongside their own products. So it's terrible. You don't have to worry about that stuff with Microsoft. I mean, nobody visits their store ever.
Well, really, that's when Apple became the privacy king, when their iAds failed, and they really didn't have any percentage in spying on you.
Yeah,
they made a virtue out of a necessity.
I do miss Ping every day.
Every day. I think, what would Ping say?
What would I say if I were on Ping?
What would I do?
I'd say, hello? Is there anybody there?
I wonder what Van
Ping.
Morris is listening to right now.
It's like a Twilight Zone episode. I'm the only person on the online service.
All right, we got to do some Xbox. I finally saw it. Now, that was a real render, right? Not a fake render of the new Xbox.
An actual back, yeah. And we'll get to that in a moment.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we know that Microsoft is going to launch Xbox Series X in 2020. We don't know the price. We suspect, and for good reason, that there'll also be something called an Xbox Series S, which will be a lower end version. I don't know if that's coming this year or next, or what the plan is for that. And then, of course, the big dark horse here is Project xCloud, which is ramping up. I mean, honestly, since the first public preview, I don't know if it was October-ish last year, there's been pretty rapid expansion of that service, and we'll get to some of that stuff later in the show. But the question there is, does that debut in 2020 as well? I think it will. And personally, what I'm really looking forward to is being able to access it on anything other than a phone, just so I could see the damn thing. Like, I think it'd be nice to, stream that stuff on my PC screen or on a Surface device or laptop of whatever kind, or my TV, or anything where the screen is bigger than a postage stamp would be nice. So we'll see how that goes. But I think we're going to see there'll be a lot of xCloud. There's a bunch of xCloud news today. And I think that's going to be the case many, many weeks this year for sure.
All right.
Nothing, Mary Jo?
Developers,
Nothing
kind of.
Nothing.
She has nothing to add there. Yeah.
I got nothing there. Got nothing
You're an
for you.
Xbox.
No,
This page
the reason I have said before, the reason I am following along with this is because this is one of the biggest new workloads in Azure for Microsoft. And it's a really big proof point for them when people say, how robust is Azure really? Well, we're running this game streaming service that's worldwide on all devices. Yeah.
And you know what? They're also going to be running one for Sony probably.
Yeah.
And that will be
that's
humongous
huge, right?
I think serving game services is a great future for Azure, honestly.
Me too. Same.
Could be a big business for them, yeah.
Yep.
And we kind of did the developer thing, right?
Yeah, but I just want to mention the one. Just so people know, today Microsoft did announce a preview SDK for Duo, which is the Android device, and this is a Java SDK. They announced that they will release a native Win32 and UWP SDK for Windows 10 that covers 10x. Yep. They're working with web standards boards to get native support for dual displays into the web, obviously, but PWAs explicitly. And they're going to have a virtual event, and let me look up when that. I believe it's in February.
Yep.
For Microsoft what they're calling the Microsoft 365 Developer Day, but it's going to cover all this dual screen stuff. So it's probably an all-day event. Yeah, Tuesday, February 11th at 8:30 a.m. PT.
Yeah.
So if you're a developer and you're interested in knowing how all this stuff's going to work, and it's everything I just said from Android to Windows to the web, they're going to talk about that stuff on February 11th.
Nice.
Yeah. So the emulators for Android are out right now as part of the SDK, right?
Yep.
And they also hinted that they're going to be making some new adjustments to Edge. They call them incubations, so the new Microsoft Edge will work in new ways across dual screen devices, both on Android and on Windows 10X.
Yeah, I should say, I didn't say this, but the Duo SDK I did say it was native Java. It requires Android Studio, which of course is the Google developer environment for Android. And that emulator runs in Android Studio, which, I'm not really that up on Android development. I've kind of played around with Android Studio a bunch. I guess this may be somewhat ignorant, but given the way that things are going in the Android developer space, I'm kind of surprised they didn't go with like a Kotlin SDK.
They use that a lot themselves inside. So
So I don't know what that's all about. I guess is Java like their version of Silverlight now or something? Like this is going to be like something they were too soon, guys.
Man.
Seriously, too soon.
Yikes.
I don't know.
You know what? I would say, since you just finished your Notepad project, maybe it's time to start developing for dual screen devices on Android, Paul.
Yeah, I don't think so. No, I don't know what I'm doing next, but I'd like to move on to C# and WPF next, probably. Something. Fun. We'll see.
Before we wrap up the 2020 prognostications from our peerless panel of prognosticators.
Our peerless self-selected panel. Yep.
Anything out of the, that doesn't fit or weird or just out of the ordinary? Any crazy ideas?
I have one crazy idea.
Mary Jo Foley.
And I haven't written about this or said it publicly because I don't want to set off alarms.
Good. Well, you could say it here because this isn't.
So here we go.
Grab the popcorn, guys. This is going to be awesome.
You know who's been missing in action for the past several months at Microsoft, and I'm wondering where they're hiding him?
Steven Sinofsky?
No, somebody real. Scott Guthrie.
Goo.
Scott Guthrie.
Where is Goo?
Where is Scott Goo, and why are they hiding him? So the kind of the common word around town when you ask people that is, oh yeah, you know what? He's out calling on customers. Okay, that's new. Ugh. He runs Azure. He runs like the whole Microsoft Cloud all up. I mean, Jason Zander works for him, but why is he like disappeared off the radar?
Maybe we should have talked about this ahead of time. So now I'm going to have to say this on the show, and I'll try to be delicate about it. But was I with you, or did we together, probably at Ignite, hear something about Scott? Does it sound familiar?
Yeah. So somebody asked us, like, where is he? Is he actually at Ignite? And he was there. Right,
but he wasn't there in
no one ever
kind
saw
of a public sense, and he typically is, right? He's right. This came up. Okay, so I thought I had heard from someone that something was going on with him, that there was a kind of a last minute disagreement about his participation in the show and whatever.
Oh, really?
Something like that. Yeah. So you weren't part of that. Okay.
No, I was not there for that. But,
okay.
So I'm not saying I think he's left the company or anything like that. I'm saying I'm curious what he's going to be doing going forward. Like, is he going to keep being the head of Microsoft Cloud all up, or is there another role for him somewhere that they're grooming? Grooming is the word of the week. Grooming him for.
Grooming. We got to work on our grooming, Mary Jo. So I think, I mean, obviously he's a very important person inside Microsoft. He's very senior. He's been a rising star for many, many years.
On the senior leadership team, blah, blah, blah.
One very likely outcome is it could be that he is working on some future thing that is kind of tangential to Azure and the cloud business.
Or maybe a mega deal, like maybe he's like personally spearheading the Jedi contract or something. I don't know. Like, it's just weird. We haven't seen or heard from him.
That's true. That's true.
Right? So that was my kind of, let's throw a match into the fire.
It could be personal.
Where's Scott Goo?
It could be personal, right? He could be ill or something. Right?
It literally could be anything. That's true.
I know. It could. Yep. It could. No, and you don't want to like introduce that as a possible
I don't want to jinx
rumor.
it or anything, but I mean, I wouldn't speculate too wildly because there's all sorts of possibilities.
See, now I'm trying to remember the details of what I.
He could be losing his hair and embarrassed to show his face.
Maybe all his red shirts turned green or something, and he can't go out in public.
He put him in the wash with his underwear, and now everything's pink.
No, I don't think it's any of those kind of things, because sometimes when those things happen, people will send you a private email and they'll be like, don't
speculate about it.
Yeah, don't do that because something is wrong. But nobody has said that.
By the way, we should also say, just to be fair to Scott, I am not personally aware of any divisive nature to this man. And there certainly have been characters that have gone through Microsoft who have been hot or cold depending on who you were. I believe he's fairly universally loved, or whatever.
Scott, we love you. You can come home.
He's a great guy.
He is a great guy.
Wherever you are, we miss you.
No, we used to see him a lot more.
We're not slagging him, but it is an interesting. That's a good question.
We used to see him a lot more. Like he'd make public appearances. He'd tweet quite a bit, and he's tweeting way less. I don't know. Yep. Just wondering.
Come down to the press room, give wedgies. He was a good guy.
He's one of those guys though at shows. He can't like walk around the hall because people run up to him and they're all like taking pictures and hugging him, and like he's really a very big persona at Microsoft.
Speaks to why I like to stay at home.
Because people hug
everybody
you.
tries to hug you,
you don't want to
too.
Let me backtrack on that one, I guess. But you don't want to be recognized out in the world, I guess is what I meant.
Paul, did you have any other oddball predictions that you didn't fit in these categories?
Just aside from the Azure Edge thing for Windows.
I know that was a good one.
I thought that was just kind of interesting. No, I don't think. I don't think that's real. No, nothing crazy.
I have one.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This will be the year that Microsoft starts using the Linux kernel.
Ooh, yeah.
Well, they have their own Linux kernel, right?
Well, why would they do that unless they plan to use it more thoroughly?
Like, you think they'll sell Linux?
I keep saying that every year. No, I think they're going to make it the next version of Windows.
Oh, do you really believe that, or are you just stirring the pot?
By the way,
why not?
The reason, because the engineering would be horrific, and what's the point? You keep Windows
around, but you maybe make a version, make an operating system, because they don't care. So maybe Azure Edge really is a Linux OS.
Well, Azure Sphere is a Linux.
In other words, Microsoft releases they could build off of any existing Linux distribution.
They've got their own kernel.
Because it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And just make more and more. Put Teams and Office and all that stuff on it. And
would they bring Win32 APIs and whatnot to Linux, or just not worry about that?
I think you keep the old version of Windows going for legacy. But that's what really hurts Windows is legacy, right? You do need a fresh. It wouldn't be bad to have a fresh start.
Oh, they've tried so much.
I know.
Well, that's because they keep building on Windows. And everybody who uses Windows says, well, it has to work with all of these things. If you don't call it Windows,
right,
you could have a new operating
Midori wasn't
system.
built on Windows, right? That research project that they followed up on for like 10 years and then dropped, but that wasn't Windows.
I really thought, and for good reason, and not because anyone said to me from inside Microsoft that this was the case, but rather just from evidence that we saw, that what we now call Windows 10X was going to be a Chrome OS type system. And I felt like that could have been what you're describing.
Right.
But they're not doing that, right? Windows 10X is based on Windows. I think given that, if Microsoft were to go to some kind of an alternate, I almost feel like Android is the better choice.
Really?
Yeah, I know.
That's Linux. It's just a different kind of Linux. I mean, it is Linux.
Yeah, let me rephrase that. I don't mean the better choice. The more likely choice.
Right.
and that this Surface Duo thing is the first inroad into that world. I think the consistency of Android from a developer perspective is what makes it interesting to Microsoft. I think one of the problems with Linux is you do have to choose a distribution,
Path.
and then
Yeah.
And what's the developer story look like? What is there even a desktop application developer story in Linux that's consistent?
Yeah.
And is there?
Yeah.
I really don't know.
Yeah.
What's it called?
But it doesn't. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not as consistent as Mac OS or any proprietary OS or Windows, but but when you write an app for Linux, you have the syscalls are all the same. You have maybe some different externals. Mostly, it's how it's installed that's different. But
are
this
there
is where
high-level frameworks like
sure.
WinForms, WPF?
Where do you think Mono came from? I mean.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That's
okay. So here, you know what? I think your idea is actually really good, but I think of it maybe a little more vague. That I think we're going to see Microsoft stepping more into non-Windows stuff.
Yeah, since they don't really care, it's okay with them if you're not using Windows. They have this problem that there is this drag on Windows because of legacy. Here's an opportunity to say, what if we create, I think I like your finesse on it, Paul, which is, what if we create a stripped down operating system that's fast and easy, that's a cloud-first operating system. Yeah. And you could use Linux for that. But it wouldn't necessarily be a Chromebook. It could be more complete than that.
This is kind of a weird problem. I think this was in the Register as recently as today or yesterday or this week or whatever, where they were talking about .NET in this case. And they were saying, when you look at the developer base for .NET, it's the people who go to shows, the people who show up at these things. It's like it's older people, And getting younger developers excited about .NET is really difficult. Not because of any actual technical deficiencies or whatever. It's just perceived as a Windows thing, as kind of a Microsoft thing, and it's not. It's a problem. And
there's two things at play here. One is that every young person wants to write an app for the iPhone. If you're a developer, that's where the gold is. And there is this feeling, I think, in general, in a variety of communities, that you don't really want to write .NET code. That's what the poor guy at the bank has to write.
Well,
that's
okay.
Paul, I don't know if you know, this was like a big hot topic on Twitter over the weekend. And there's a woman developer named Kelly Summers she's actually been an Azure MVP and a Cassandra MVP, and she kicked off this thread just saying, you know what, you guys don't get it. You people in the .NET community, like people who are in the OSS world, the open source world, they don't really care about .NET. Like, that's not the cool place to be, right?
In fact, the fact that anybody thinks that they would surprises me.
Yeah.
It just shows you how much of a bubble we all live in, right?
And all the Microsoft people were kind of like, no, wait, there's cool stuff happening in .NET, and everything they're pointing to. She's like, yeah, that's not where people my age who are in open source want to
okay, work. So this is a problem. The thing is, I think .NET Core, what will become .NET 5, is technically excellent. I think that C# is technically excellent.
How hard an API is it to learn? Is it a big deal to learn it?
No, I think if anyone who is familiar with Java, for example, could move into this world very easily.
Historically, learning the Windows libraries and all those calls has been challenging.
Yeah, but the .NET stuff was a very clean way to
so it hides all that complexity.
That that stuff. Honestly, it's one of Microsoft's greatest achievements. I actually think that stuff's great, but there is I do believe that. But what am I? I'm a middle-aged white guy. Of course, I think it's great, Leo. Look at me.
You look like a Windows user, Paul. I hate to say
you look like a .NET developer to me.
You don't have any stickers on your laptop. I know.
I hate you all.
Open source has a posse, man.
All right. Well, there you go.
But anyway,
I think you're onto something. Is the point? I don't know that Microsoft will literally come out with with Linux or whatever, but But
they wouldn't call it Linux. They wouldn't call it Windows. They'd have another name for it. Or they might call it Windows. It'd be
Microsoft have to put out before we wake up to this. I mean,
they're
there's
very
a Linux
close.
kernel in WSL.
Yes.
They have a Azure Sphere, which is Linux. They are wholeheartedly support Android, which is sort of Linux. They're coming out with their own Android device. I mean,
that's my point.
They're
exactly.
kind of moving in this world.
If you would think I was smoking crack if I'd said this 3 years ago.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
But it's starting to look a lot like It's starting to look a lot like Linux. I mean, it's kind of it's Linux everywhere. It's kind of coming down Linux.
Wasn't there an Android Cloud announcement this week, like running Android apps?
Yes,
in the cloud?
that was really interesting. Yeah, Canonical's going to do an Android that you could run anywhere. That's a really interesting.
I know. So we've talked about that as possibly being the future of Windows, which would be all your apps are containerized and everything runs virtually.
It's called Anbox.
Of course, the one thing we also have to remember is that once Microsoft does fully adopt Android or Linux and move to this world, Google will have moved on to whatever their next thing is. They'll drop Android like a bad.
One of the reasons that this makes sense, by the way, Anbox, is because you're not you don't care what the OS is. You're running in containers on the cloud,
right?
And so you just need this kind of minimal OS service layer.
This is literally the dream. Like you could even extend this to some legacy Win32 app, whatever it is that you have to run.
Right.
It should be able to run on any platform in some container where it has just what it needs to make this thing pop up on your screen and work.
Isn't that what Microsoft truly wants? They don't. I don't think they see a vast future in selling desktop operating systems. Really, do they?
No, they want to just ride that out till the end, right?
Aside from
they're not going to kill it, but they're not.
Has there been a great Windows app developed in the past few months? I mean, think about it.
No.
Yeah, nothing that you'd say, oh God, I gotta run Linux.
No, killer apps. That whole idea is kind of
killer apps. Yeah.
Right.
and frankly, any app that you want is available in any flavor. Really, there's very few apps where you say, oh, I gotta have Windows to run this.
And as far as desktop platforms go, I mean, the rise of mobile apps has erased the problems that we see on Linux, especially, but also on the Mac, where the expense of creating, putting apps that were on Windows already onto these other platforms was just too much. But now if you can create a web app that runs everywhere, that seems to be the natural way to go. And even on mobile, that could be the natural way to go, depending on the app,
That was a good prediction, though. I like that you threw that in.
Yeah.
It's a very left field prediction, but
no, it's a good one. I think you are onto something.
You can't always assume it's just going to be like little blips of announcements all year. Because look at Surface Duo. Like we really didn't see that coming, right? I mean, Microsoft's doing an Android phone. Oh, what? I mean, we had hints about that, but
you know what else we didn't see coming?
What?
Graphing calculator.
I thought you were gonna say like an app, some kind of. Okay.
I didn't see that coming at all.
I didn't see that coming. Sorry.
If you're not sitting down, I need you to sit down.
Okay,
because
I'm on
this
my ball.
one
Does that count?
is huge.
Yeah.
Microsoft is bringing a graphing mode to the calculator app in Windows 10.
Whoa!
He fell right off
While
that
we
ball.
wait for Leo to get the head injury specialist that he needs. I know.
I've just demonstrated.
In fact,
you can
it
fall
was
off
the
a ball.
only new feature in the latest Windows Insider build.
I know.
Wow. Actually, you know what? It took Apple a really long time to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure it is a hard computer science problem. Not being sarcastic.
It's not, but
not being
you
sarcastic.
can do it in Wolfram Alpha on the web. I mean,
I don't know how hard it is. I'm sure it's somewhat difficult.
We're talking about calculators. It's not like words. It's numbers.
It's numbers. Wow.
Profound. Head mind blown.
Someone, but this is like to give you. I don't mean to make fun of an individual. I obviously won't say his name because I don't remember it. But there was someone in my website comments who said, "Can you imagine if they brought this to iOS and Android?" I was like, "Yeah, I can imagine that. What would change?"
Yes, as a matter of fact.
What? Like, yeah.
No, so I have a question. So there's a Windows calculator that they put on GitHub and made it open source, right? And then is that the same calculator that's in Windows 10 or a different calculator?
Yes, it's the same one. It's the UWP Windows 10. Yep.
It's probably some 12-year-old made a commit to the open source project. You know, you can find some graphing in here. You like cool. You know, the funny thing is there was a good article last year about the TI. I can't remember what the number is.
Oh, no, that was
no. It's like 85. It's a graphing calculator. And how TI lobbied really hard with the testing services to make it a requirement. They sell, in fact, I was just helping my daughter move. She's 28, and I'm packing stuff up. Oh, look, here's your graphing calculator that you had to buy.
Right. Everyone got one of those.
Remember, your kids had to buy one, right?
I had to. I had to get one when I went back to school. Like this is $100 every fall for every student.
Whereas you could do it on your phone or anything. But TI lobbied really hard. Let me see if I can find that article, because it's a hysterical, example of how the market is not perfect.
Yep.
They got the testing services to require it. Saying, well, you wouldn't want a kid to have a phone in there.
The same thing.
Yeah.
Just a calculator.
Texas Instruments is lobbying schools to make Algebra 2 a requirement. This is from 2013, because you need a TI graphing calculator. How Texas Instruments monopolized math class. The TI-84 Plus, how an outdated this is it. How an outdated calculator still holds a monopoly. Washington Post, 2014. And it's a shocking story, actually.
Yeah.
It's kind of depressing, because we've all done it. We've all had to buy this $100 calculator that is basically the same model they put out 20 years ago.
Things myself.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the #1 bestseller, the TI-84 Plus, from 2004.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's all comes down to, you just got to know what palms to grease.
Yep.
Right. See, we're also worried about Amazon and Google and Facebook, but the real villain here.
Watch out. TI.
Right.
Casio tried to put one out, but
It's funny. Just today, the thing came up about Sonos and how they're obsoleting products that are 15 years old, and people are freaking out.
Yep.
And I was thinking,
it's the way they're obsoleting it, though.
No, I get it, but I mean, look around your office. Do you have a single personal technology product that is that old that you use every single day?
Besides my Sonos.
That's what I mean. Like they actually. Well, I guess the TI falls into this category. That thing's even older.
Yeah.
Now, how old does the Sonos have to be?
It's not 15 years old. It's not that old.
No,
No.
They were manufactured between 2006 and 2000.
The point is, speakers really haven't evolved that much over the last 70 years or whatever. And those are perfectly good speakers, but Sonos is bricking them so you can't even use them as speakers, because they don't want them to come out onto the market as in an aftermarket, because they say, well, it won't support our modern features. Yeah, but you could still use it's a speaker.
Sure.
Anyway, that's a little annoying. Not as bad as TI keeping the calculator.
No, TI is the worst.
Yeah, they're just, man, forget Amazon. It is funny. This is in the Washington Post.
Right. There you go.
Jeff Bezos at the editorial meeting.
Like, you thought Amazon was bad.
Can we, is there anybody we could find to really give it to him?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. Windows 10.
No, that was the whole story.
1909.
Yeah. That's it.
Now broadly available to seekers. Didn't we do that last week?
Well, what this means is that they're going to start aggressively pushing it to 1809 users, for one thing. So that's going to happen automatically now. And basically, I believe they passed all of the compatibility hurdles. So because again, it wasn't really a feature update. This is an easy one. So if you just go check for updates, you're going to get this thing. It won't just install. You'll have to say, okay, I want to get it. But it's basically going out to everybody at this point, which is quick. But it's quick because it isn't really a feature update.
The German government has decided they wish to keep Windows 7 for a long time. Actually, I bet they're not the only government doing that.
No, they're not.
With Linux go? Oh, it didn't work? Okay.
That's right. They were going to do Linux, weren't they?
Oh,
so they have, 30, was it? Oh, 85,000 computers still running Windows 7.
And they don't want to do the free upgrade? That's a lot of computers, Leo. It would take a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, they don't have that many. They have at least, I'm sorry, they have 33,000. They have 85,000 machines overall. 23.5% of them, or about 33,000, are still running Windows 7.
Still a lot.
So they are upgrade. They are migrating to Windows 10. It's just taking a while. Yeah. So they're going to pay.
Yeah, they're not the only government. So I saw somebody say on Twitter today, "Wow, I wonder if Microsoft knew Windows 7 extended security updates was going to be a big business." Yep, I'm sure they did.
The next billion-dollar business. I'm sure the UK government is like, could we upgrade from Windows XP to 7? Is that something we can do?
Can we just do that? Yeah, it's a lot of money. $25 per device, right? And then it doubles.
But it doubles every year.
Yep.
Which means in the year 2030, it's going to be like $8 billion.
If they're still on it by then.
Per computer.
I mean, hopefully the people who are doing this and buying extended security updates aren't going to keep it for the full 3 years, and they're hopefully going to do it in less.
The goal of this is to make it painful so people do upgrade.
Right. Right. They don't want to make it easy on you, for sure.
I don't know what this means, but I'm going to read it. It's 1 week later. Windows 7 fans, how are we doing? What are you?
Is that like a group hug? How are we all doing?
Yeah, in the emotional part of the show.
Oh, 1 week after the Touch Tuesday.
It has been 1 week.
I have to say there is one. Isn't there a big flaw in Windows 7? What was it? It's not the NSA flaw.
Not the NSA thing.
No, there was another flaw there's a 0 day. Oh, Internet Explorer 0 day.
Oh yeah.
Will they patch that?
But if I don't know, but
remember, it took a long time after XP was deprecated before there was anything so serious that you said, "Oh, I wonder if they're going to patch it."
Yeah, but you shouldn't be. You're not really using IE with Windows 7.
No,
are you? I mean, if you're going to use Windows 7,
it doesn't matter if it's on the machine.
Oh.
A malicious site can launch IE, and it's the jscript.dll that comes with IE. Is and there's 0 days. There are exploits out there right now.
Okay. Yeah. So
there are mitigations, but
the one would be to uninstall Internet Explorer and then use Chrome or whatever, or use Edge.
Right. It's that JScript DLL. Yeah. So I guess because there's a mitigation, they wouldn't feel obligated to patch it. It's a pretty serious flaw,
I bet if you get extended support, it will be patched.
What Microsoft's saying is it'll be patched next Patch Tuesday, but that doesn't mean Windows 7, obviously, right?
I don't know. Let's find out. We'll check.
Let's find out.
We'll find out on Tuesday. Mark your calendars, kids.
Next Patch Tuesday. Yeah, that'll be the second Tuesday of February.
Right.
Right. So.
Have other than that, have you heard? I haven't heard anything.
Screams.
I thought the radio show for sure I'd get calls and stuff.
That you didn't?
No.
Yeah, I think for normal people, this is like, you know. There have been some reports of the desktop going black, which is something you see when software is counterfeited or whatever.
Yeah, like wallpapers
that's an annoyance.
went black. Yeah.
Really?
Now they're just screwing with people. You know, they're like, we're just going to randomly change things, and I don't know.
There is that big, almost full screen pop up.
Yeah.
But I think really the way I'd interpret it is the word had gone out, and so nobody's surprised by this.
Oh, no, months ago there were pop-ups, and then even this full screen thing, you can say, I don't want to see this anymore.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't want to be bothered by it, you can just keep going.
I bet a lot of people are still on Windows 7.
There are tons of people still on Windows 7.
Well, there's hundreds 30 million Germans.
I mean, but a lot of people who are on are just like, I don't care. I feel like I can defend myself rightly or wrongly, and I'm staying on it. That's it.
So this ties into this Gartner thing. So last week, Gartner and IDC had come out with their market share figures for PCs in 2019 and showed a very small amount of growth. Like I think it was 1.9% average between the two. But growth, and like I said last week, we'll take that as a win. But now Gartner's saying that's over. 2020, the next 3 years, the market's going to fall again. But the good news is it's not a big drop. And if you look, we had shown that kind of market share chart over time. I feel like this thing is kind of plateaued. I mean, it may go down a little, maybe up, down, whatever. But I think we're at this point where we're going to be in the mid 200 million range every year for a while, and it's still 250 million. Is still 250 million. So it seems like that's where the PC is and will be for the foreseeable future. But it's interesting, Windows 7. You'd think with that many users on that thing, it would have a bigger impact. And it never really did, and it never might, But I think that just speaks to the way the world's changed. Thanks to mobile devices, I think there's less of an incentive for many people to even bother, upgrading or moving on to something else.
Yeah. Next Wednesday after Windows Weekly, it's Microsoft's next quarterly earnings report, and it'll be interesting to see how much Windows 7 end of life plays in on that report.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, that's an interesting part of this. When people talk about how some huge percentage of these Windows 7 computers out in the world are in corporations or in enterprise, and they're going to have to upgrade at some point. I think the one thing that gets left out of that conversation is that when that happens, nothing changes from a revenue perspective. They're already paying Microsoft for Windows. It doesn't matter what version of Windows they're getting. Windows 10 sales don't get a boost. They're already paying for Windows 10 licenses.
Right, because of software assurance, right? And they're already licensing.
It's not like they're forking over new money to get a new version of Windows. They're paying for it. They're already paying for it. So
that's a good point.
That's one of the things. Like everyone thought there was going to be this big jump. There will be a jump in usage, Windows 10 versus Windows 7, right? Because people will literally switch over. Yeah. But as far as it having a material impact, to the PC industry where people are buying new computers, or to Microsoft's revenues, I mean, not really. Microsoft gets more revenues.
They probably make more off of the extended security updates than they'll make just from Windows license change.
Yes, but that's why they're pushing Microsoft 365, because that's where the revenue boost comes from. You have companies that were on Office 2010 that were on Windows 7. And what they want you to do is get on this higher price SKU that includes this other stuff. And that's where they're going to get a boost. And a sustainable boost too, right? It's not a one-time upgrade boost.
Yeah. Totally.
Some Windows 10 on ARM. WOA milestones.
Whoa.
Yeah, milestones.
These are minor, but I just wanted to kind of point these out. I know there's some fans out there, Windows 10 on ARM, and hasn't been a lot of big news on this platform, but the native ARM64 version of Microsoft Edge beta channel is now available. So presumably the, what are we calling the shipping version? The, whatever that is, the stable or whatever.
Stable
that will come
channel.
at some point.
Yep.
Yeah, and then this one's actually kind of a bigger deal than maybe you might realize. But Microsoft Mouse and Keyboard Center is now available on Windows 10 and ARM. And that's the native drivers for the Microsoft hardware. Not just the drivers, but the software that you can customize the devices with. It's super important because what you got before was just like the class drivers. So it's really basic functionality. If you have a Microsoft mouse or keyboard, this stuff will let you really customize that. And it's, it's great software. So you could argue it should have been there a year ago or whatever, but whatever, it's there. So that's good. That's good. For the, few of you using this platform.
Let me take a little break.
Okay.
Because I'm so overwhelmed with excitement. But I want to tell you about Melissa. Bad data happens to good companies. That's a short story in a nutshell, right? Windows Weekly listeners, you may have a address list, a contact list that you use for everything from, in my case, Christmas cards to brochures to mailers. And you know that there lurk within that list bad addresses, duplicate addresses. There's nothing good about bad data. It costs money, it hurts sales, it decreases customer satisfaction. I could tell you, when I get 3 catalogs from the same company at the same day, I know it makes me mad. That's a waste. Bouncing emails, not a good thing for your business either. Why don't you come clean with Melissa? Melissa is used by some of the biggest companies and the littlest companies. You know, mailers spend about $20 billion a year in undeliverable mail. 10,000 organizations worldwide don't have that problem because they use Melissa. Like Delta Faucet, they use it in their call centers, which improves their global address auto-completion. You know, you've had that experience, you're on the line, and, you know, it always makes me mad when I have to say the city, state, and then the zip code. If they have the zip code, they don't need the city and the state. I love it when I'm on a website and I type the first few letters of the street name and all of a sudden it says, you mean, yeah, that's it. Delta Faucet was able to improve their call center processes with global address auto-completion. Melissa was able to reduce the fraudulent e-commerce transactions for Z1 Motorsports by 90%, because a lot of times the people give out addresses like 123 Main Street, Anytown, USA. Melissa says, Melissa provides a full spectrum of data quality protection for your customer data. Verify postal addresses, mobile numbers, email addresses, automatically update the addresses of customers who've moved, eliminate duplicate records, and you can use Melissa's analytics to get additional information, insights into that address list that you've been maintaining. Easily build address verification and customer data validation. That's what Delta Faucet did using Melissa's APIs. It's very simple to put it in your custom application or use their CRM cloud connectors or e-commerce plugins. You can even just upload a data file to Melissa for a quick cleanse. And by the way, I know if I say that, you're going to say, oh, I don't know. I mean, but I want you to know Melissa is totally serious about securely managing your data. That's why they continually engage independent security audits to reinforce their commitment to data security, to privacy, to compliance requirements. They do it right. They're SOC2, HIPAA, and GDPR compliant. Look, bad data happens to good companies. 10,000 organizations worldwide trust Melissa to get their customer data clean and accurate. You can try it right now. In fact, I've got a great deal for you. Get started with 25,000 records clean for free. That's a $75 value at melissa.com/twit. MELISSA, like the girl's name, melissa.com/twit, or call 1-800-MELISSA. They're very nice people. And find out more. melissa.com/twit. Thank you, Melissa, for supporting Windows Weekly. Thank you, Windows Weekly listener, for supporting us by going to melissa.com/twit. If you have need of this service, and you know if you do, this is the one to use. All right. We got, it's time to get out your Hobonichi Techo, your day planner, and write in some dates. I'm going to open it up right now for the year 2020, and we're going to put in some dates here.
All right.
Yeah, I'm serious.
So we talked already in our predictions. Maybe there'll be a spring hardware event in New York. Maybe, around the April-May timeframe. That's typically what Microsoft's been doing, is a spring hardware announcement right before build. So you can tentatively pencil that one in. We don't have an exact date or location, but that's likely coming up. Build, we already know. We're going to Seattle May 19th to 21st. That's already on the calendar.
Oh, let me put
Inspire,
that in mind.
we're not going.
Oh,
we can't go
because it's
anymore
in Vegas?
Well, that's a good reason, but
And
that's
Paul's
not the
been
only
banned
reason.
from every casino?
No,
Right.
it's a partner show. And, the press used to get invited, at least some press used to get invited to that. And it was a really awesome event, but no more press because it's co-located with the Microsoft Sales Conference, and they don't want us hanging around with their salespeople for some
Jerks.
reason. Grooming.
I really liked Inspire.
Grooming.
Yeah. It was a great place for grooming.
That is a great place for grooming and drinks. But yeah, that's in July in Vegas. So I'm not sad I'm not going to that, I have to say. But the new edition, we just found out late last week, is Ignite 2020. So we all thought we were going to Orlando in November. Nope. We're going to New Orleans in September.
Oh, more fun.
I know.
Let me tell you how much better that destination is.
Oh, so much
Go
more
ahead.
fun.
Are you
Yeah.
kidding
Go
me?
to Frenchman
I know.
Street, hear some jazz.
Yep.
I'm getting
Yeah.
broiled
So September
oysters.
21.
Get some
We're gonna be in-
beignets.
I'm going to eat my body weight in oysters that week. It's going to be
Oh, yum,
fantastic.
yum,
Leo,
yum.
you should
Can't
come.
wait.
This is like Ignite.
right.
You should come too.
Okay.
All right.
September 21st, 25th. You got me. I love New Orleans.
There are
know,
worse
you should-
places on earth, but there
You
were a
should
few
go.
better
It'll
places.
still be
on Earth.
hot. It's going to
But
be
it won't be
hot.
too
It's going to
hot.
be
Hot.
hot.
New Orleans is hot, but it's late September. It won't be killer. It'll
Right.
be nice, I think.
So I'll tell you,
Yeah.
the puzzling thing about this event to me is why did they move it to September?
Because it's
And-
too hot.
So
Why?
I think
Like-
it has to do with scheduling, right? Didn't they run?
You do?
First of all, they couldn't have done it in November in Orlando again because that's when the election is,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Can't
That would have
compete.
screwed the whole thing up. So they can't do
Yeah,
that.
no.
And I think that there was a scheduling issue with the place in Florida, and I think they
Oh, there
just
was?
this is where they landed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was curious if they moved it up for a particular reason, like if it had anything to do with Surface Duo and Neo. Because we know that's
I bet it's
launching at
because
Holiday.
of. Yeah, I think it's just availability. You know,
do?
obviously
Okay.
there's only a couple places they can do it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
next, I believe the election is literally the reason this happened. But you know
Okay.
what?
Who
Fantastic.
knows? Right. I know. Yeah. It was a big
Fantastic.
surprise. Like, they just tweeted it out. I think it was on Friday. Like, hey, we're going to New Orleans
Yeah.
instead of Orlando.
Listen, I mean,
Wow.
we probably talked about this. Honestly, the Orlando that we experienced during the show isn't bad. We're very self-contained in this small area. It's gotten very familiar. The hotel we go to is fantastic. I could not be happier that I'm going to New Orleans instead.
Yeah. And
I
you know,
love
we'll
New
have a
Orleans.
new
It's-
Patch Tuesday for sure. Sazerac, maybe. Little Patch Tuesday Sazerac. action.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, a new drink, you mean?
I think so.
Yeah.
We
should.
I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And then we don't know. We're also thinking there'll be a fall hardware launch for the Neo and Duo and whatever else, but we don't know when. Like, will it be before September, after September? My guess would be after September.
Typically it's October. I mean, there's no reason
Right.
not to do it in October.
Yeah. So that's kind of it for our calendar. There are other smaller kind of side events and specialty shows like SharePoint conferences and such, but that's
Right.
kind of how our year is evolving here.
It's good.
Looks
This
okay.
is good.
Yeah. Looks
Yeah.
okay.
Pasting it into Slack Teams right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
Leo.
Oh,
Oh,
you
Leo.
just
Oh,
binged
Leo.
it, didn't you? No, you.
I binged it. Yeah, I'm excited
Yeah.
about the launch.
Outside of a
Neo and
TV
Duo.
show that was sponsored by Microsoft, no one has ever said they binged anything.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, on the NFL playoffs, did you see the guy using his nose to scroll on his Surface? I'm not even kidding.
No, I did not see that.
Yeah,
Why
people
on earth
were-
would anyone do that?
People were tweeting to me and saying, Mary Jo Foley has a new Surface test. Is it noseable?
Noseable.
And I said, I'm not doing that, guys.
So this was a player or a coach who had
Sounds
the
like a
Surface on
player.
the
I'm going to
sidelines?
guess it's a player.
It was some guy on the
Maybe
sidelines
they were
wearing
all
a uniform.
they had
I don't
gloves
know.
on or something that didn't work.
Yeah,
with
he
the
had gloves
touch.
on. Yeah.
Okay, that must have been why.
Panos tweeted it. You look for Panos's tweet.
Oh, it's better than when people were kicking them around or throwing them
That's
at the
true.
ground.
Throwing them in the
because
trash
things were-
barrels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick. Yeah.
It's the all press is good press, right?
That's what Frank used to say.
Funny. So funny. All right. Microsoft is joining the climate change movement. They're gonna
Yeah, this story has generated some semi-humorous headlines.
I thought it was interesting.
Microsoft's
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're going to remove from the atmosphere all of the carbon they've created since the company was founded in 1976. Now,
They
I'm
said
pretty sure
that.
it's not going to be the exact carbon they created,
No. Well, any carbon will do.
but any carbon will do.
any carbon in a
Any
storm.
old carbon.
Any old carbon will do.
Yeah, so people talk about being carbon neutral, right? Which is whatever.
Right.
And Microsoft is, of course, raising the ante by being carbon negative by 2030. Cool. And then they're going to have basically replaced, or I guess offset all of the carbon they've created since the company's founding in 1976 by 2050.
Plant a lot of trees.
Yep.
That's all.
That will do it.
Yep. And
So that's the good news story.
Yeah. There's carbon
And
then there's this.
sequestering now. There's
Then
all these
there's
ways to
this.
do it.
What the. Microsoft is
heck?
like the agony of defeat part of the sports show. Like they do things like this.
I know. They do something really amazing, and then like right afterwards, you're like, and there we go.
Yep.
Yeah. So
It's
you should talk about the ads because that's your thing.
That's my thing. That's that hill I'm going to die on.
You're going to die
Yeah,
on that hill.
I don't understand. I don't think this is a big deal in the sense that not many people probably use WordPad. But if you're not familiar with the rich text editor that's still built into Windows for some reason and sports like an Office 2013 style ribbon or whatever the heck it is, it's still there. And apparently Microsoft is testing putting ads in there as well. I have seen ads in Word on Office 365. That's amazing. That's why you guys lost.
It's a Tennessee
It looks like he's licking the
Titans
surface, but he's
player
not.
on the sideline, and he's
That's
just
crazy.
rubbing his nose because he's wearing gloves. It's cold. It's cold. It was a cold day.
He's from Tennessee. He doesn't know what the cold's like.
Kansas City. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
he
anyway,
can go left, right,
if you're
and up, down. Okay, sorry.
Anyway, the ads are very much similar to the ads you might see in Microsoft Word if you have Office 365, or if you ever saw those. If you ever go into like the network part of File Explorer, a little yellow bar comes down and says, "Hey, did you want to connect to the network?" It looks like that. So I don't like this kind of thing. It's slippery slope, et cetera, but. WordPad, I mean, like, is anyone, if you put an ad in an app no one uses, did you put an ad somewhere? I don't know.
But it is. I mean, people are offended, I guess. I mean, what's the ad for?
Of course,
Buy Office?
Leo, listen, we live for faux outrage.
Yeah.
I keep running this app
faux.
trying to see the.
It's an ad
Well, it is
for
if you
Office
don't use
Online,
if you don't
right?
use the app, who cares?
But if you use the app, it's annoying.
Yeah.
Right?
If this thing
Isn't it
came
an
up
ad
with
for
paint,
Office
I would
Online,
get it,
though,
but-
which is really funny, right? Because
Why are you using
that's not
WordPad
even something you buy.
when you
It's
could use our
free.
free program? Oh, this one's
Right.
free.
Well,
too.
I think they want to get people off. Maybe what they've
They do.
discovered is, hey, there are 7 people using WordPad. Let's target those guys.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So that's the least onerous, I would say, of these two negative stories.
Yeah.
What do you think about this other one?
Okay, so this other one, at first I didn't think it was a big deal, but then the more I looked into it, I was like, wow, Microsoft, really? So what they're going to do is if you're an Office 365 Pro Plus user, starting in mid-February in certain countries, including the US, they're going to start pushing an extension to Chrome to you that is for Microsoft Search in Bing. It's not optional. Like, that's just going to come to your Chrome browser if you're using Chrome. And so that's bad. They're pushing you an
Yes.
extension to your browser.
That's bad.
I mean, people have said that's malware, basically,
Yes.
right?
I know it's crazy. That's
But-
crazy. Yep.
But it is going to change your default engine to Bing. It
No.
pushes it to you.
I know. Here's the problem.
How's this going to happen? Who's this? What's this?
I know it's crazy. This is crazy.
So my prediction, I'm making a prediction here. I predict they're going to undo this
Oh,
decision.
hell yes.
I did. Yeah, I
Of course they are.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
But you know why? But it's not because users are freaked out about this. It's because isn't this the job of IT to specify what these people's computer configurations look like?
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
that they're bypassing IT to do this. Like, this is
They are.
crazy. This is
No,
not
and so
an option
if-
IT can enable.
no, if you're an IT pro, you can use like group policies and other blocking tools to stop this, but you have to do it ahead of time because once it's on users' machine, then you got to find out a way to get it off all of your users' machines if you don't want it. So the reason Microsoft's doing this is Microsoft Search in Bing is a very interesting, cool product. It lets you do
cool. It is
intranet search, right? But
It
the
is
only
really
way
cool.
it works is if you use Bing. And so if they just push it to people who have Edge, it's not going to go to anybody, right? Because no one uses
Why does
Edge.
it work that way? Why would it care? Why would this search thing care
know.
what your default search engine was? Why wouldn't it just use Bing anyway?
I know.
It's a Microsoft search. What?
Right.
I don't
predict-
understand this at all.
So they've made a few at the end of last year. They made a few very bad policy decisions at Microsoft, and they undid them within days.
Yes.
Like one of those was when they were going to let everybody just start using Power Platform tools and go around IT, and they undid that. I predict they're going to undo this too, because if you look at Twitter today, people are flipping out. They're just like, wait a minute, you're going to push an extension to my Chrome browser that like I don't even want, and if I have Office Pro Plus, it's just going to come to me and all of my users. It's crazy, right?
It is crazy. Now, the good news is, if they don't backtrack on this, any user can revert their search engine to whatever they want.
You can. Yep.
So it's not like they're not usurping the browser completely. That you know you can still do whatever you want with it.
Right.
But
that's why at first I was
rather
like, oh, well,
incredible
you can just switch
that
it
Microsoft.
back.
No, but come on, they're not just shipping an extension for a third-party browser. They're enabling it, and switching over your default. So that's
you're
crazy.
hijacking somebody's browser, basically.
It's crazy.
Right? I mean, if somebody did this to Microsoft with Edge, they would be up and
oh my God, you never hear the end of it.
Right.
This is how you lose your moral authority. Like, you can't do something like this. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Microsoft.
Come on, Microsoft. Do the right thing.
That's not even. It's not even.
I think they will do the right thing, but it's amazing that this ever.
No.
How did this ever pass muster
this
anywhere?
Was a good idea. Yeah.
There wasn't someone in the chain who was like, "Wait, what are we doing?" Yeah. No, we're not doing that. That's crazy.
I know. Yeah. It's
crazy.
Yeah. Hopefully next week's show will be like, you know what? They changed their mind. Yay.
Yep.
Let's do some more Xbox stuff, because you can never have too much.
You can never have enough of that.
Finally.
So last week,
Go
I
find
think
your
it was.
Beer. It's okay.
No, she wants to hear this. She loves ports on the back of Xbox. We had written about the ports that will be on the Xbox Series X. This week, photos of the device actually leaked, confirming what we know. Mary Jo, just for your edification, there is an HDMI port. It's an HDMI out port. What's missing is HDMI in. So
they used to have an in and an out, so you would pass it through the Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but nobody's done that since the late '80s. So.
Yeah. This is focused solely on gaming. You know, they're giving that up. So what you get is 2 USB, Ethernet, the power port, obviously HDMI for video, and then optical audio, which is optional, obviously. So it's honestly not particularly interesting, other than the fact that it kind of confirms what we already had said was going to happen. So we can see pictures of it. So that's happening.
Yay.
I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but Microsoft, because it is now in the second half of the month, has announced the new titles that are coming to Game Pass for PC and Game Pass for console in the second half of the month. You know, they usually do one right at the beginning of the month and then a second announcement for the second half. It's actually kind of late in the month for this to be happening, but, you know, whatever. The other thing that doesn't get enough press, I think, this is something people should know about, but, you know, games also leave the Game Pass subscription, which is kind of an interesting thing. So this coming, I think at the end of this month, some of the bigger games that will be gone are Saints Row, the third Resident Evil 4, Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, The Division, which is that Tom Clancy game, and Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. But at least you'll have Sea Salt, the action strategy hybrid.
I want to play this. This actually sounds
and Fishing
like fun.
Sim.
Fishing Sim World
Fishing
Pro
Sim,
Tour.
Yeah. So you can be bored without having to be on the water.
Sea Salt is an action strategy hybrid in which you are an old god summoning unfathomable horrors to blight the human lands. By summoning a tide of minions, your army will emerge from the sea to take vengeance on the religious figures who dare to defy you and anyone else that stands in your way. Is it like Populous? You will have your sacrifice, and humanity will pay for denying what you're owed. I feel like this is my life story. I
was going to say, this pretty much describes the podcast.
Yeah, right here. Or you can compete in authentic career mode against 100 pro anglers to become the best fisherman in the world.
Right.
From bass, carp, and predator fishing, play your way in custom multiplayer competition and online tournaments, while using equipment from over 50 partners on real-world venues targeting 29 different species of fish. Those fish won't know what was
those virtual
coming.
fish.
Virtual.
No idea what's going on.
No. Look at the size of that bass.
Yep.
Oh,
All right, so that's not very exciting.
Okay.
But more exciting
Yes.
is if you're on the xCloud preview, Microsoft this week added 16 new games, and there's some really big ones, including Destiny 2, Halo, the Master Chief Collection, the 2 Batman Telltale series, which have 5 episodes each, and also The Wolf Among Us, which is another great Telltale game, and a bunch of other stuff. You know, Sid Meier's Civilization 6, Portal Knights, The Surge, et cetera, et cetera. There's a bunch of that stuff. So that's cool. And this is what I was talking about earlier when I was saying, you know, it seems like almost every week we're getting some xCloud news. I keep waiting for more devices, but we're getting a lot more games. Remember, this thing only launched, I think it was with 4 games originally in preview, and now they have, if not 100, many dozens of games, certainly. So that's good. And the other big news here is Xbox console streaming, which some people are confusing with xCloud a little bit.
This is not
has
xCloud.
expanded.
This is different.
No, but it's the same app. And so this is another way to stream games through the Xbox platform. So if you have an Xbox and you want to stream to another device and play it much as you would xCloud, that's what this is. And you use the same mobile app. It works the same way, except it's just your game. And so you have to have the game, obviously, on the console. So it's not like you have your whole collection, but you can stream anything that's on your console to your device. That's cool. And so this is available. It launched last fall sometime as a limited preview to Xbox insiders in the United States, and now it's available everywhere in the world in preview. So if you're in the insider program on any level for the Xbox, you can do console streaming, and this will come to a they don't call them feature updates, like a monthly system update sometime probably in the next month or two to everybody. So it's this indicates it's about ready to go, you know, live, probably, and that's whatever the spring update is called. So that's happening. That's good.
Okie dokie. Let's take a break from our beautiful Lastpass studios. When we come back, the back of the book, the tips, the tricks, all the things of the week, including the beer.
All the things.
All the things will be at your disposal. But first, a word from our sponsors. We come to you from the beautiful Twid Lastpass studios in downtown Petaluma, California. We are big fans of Lastpass. I honestly would probably do these ads. In fact, I think I was for years, pro bono, because it's just so important that you be using a password manager. Not only at home, but also in your office, at work. We use LastPass Enterprise here at work. In fact, we believe in LastPass so much, we give all our employees a LastPass account as part of their, employment. They get a personal account. So you got your premium or your family. I use family at home. It's so great. Just yesterday, Lisa said, "Can I get that password?" And that's easy. Instead of you don't even have to share it. You just move it to the family shared folder. And actually, the enterprise version has that even more so, because you have different departments with shared resources. So the business office gets access to QuickBooks. The engineering team gets access to the databases and the web servers. And never the twain shall meet. It is the best way to keep track of all of your most important stuff, and not just passwords. I use LastPass for my driver's license, my passport. When I travel, I don't, they always say, keep a copy of your password in case you lose it. I do, but it's on my phone, securely stored with LastPass. Let me tell you what security means to me. The only person that can access anything in my LastPass vault, whether it's passwords, social security numbers, passports, whatever, is me. That data is never decrypted anywhere but on my devices, every device, too, that I want to use. Mac, Windows, Linux, iOS, Android. Never decrypted anywhere in the cloud. LastPass does not have access to that data at all. It's trust no one encryption. Only you can decrypt it. The nice thing is you never again have to think up a password. Think up one password, make it good and strong for your LastPass vault. And actually, you should do what I do. Not only have a great password, but use two-factor. I have a YubiKey that I use. But, you can use the authenticator too. But to make sure that, that LastPass vault is locked down, and then everything else is stored in there. LastPass generates the passwords, so they're long and strong and completely non-memorable, which means completely impossible to brute force. LastPass's own vault is impossible to brute force. They do all sorts of interesting things to protect it, like, for instance, PBKDF2, the derivative key function, that makes it, I think they do 100,000 iterations, so it's virtually impossible to brute force a LastPass password. If you're on the business plan, you'd want to take a look at MFA, multi-factor authentication, not just two-factor, not just password and an authenticator, but other means of identifying you, saying you are who you say you are, the IP address you're using, your geolocation, things like that, biometrics. I really like that. There's single sign-on, which does something that traditionally in security is impossible. It makes it both secure and more convenient. Our staff loves single sign-on, and LastPass has 1,500 plus single sign-on apps that they integrate with. Everything's encrypted with AES 256 before syncing, and then it's synced with TLS to protect you from man-in-the-middle attacks. They do everything right. I just want you to try LastPass. We use it at Twit. I use it at home. I've used it for years. You should be using it. It's the single most important thing you can do for your security. Go to lastpass.com/twit. Find the LastPass that's right for you. And man, do it in the business. Because your employees, if you're not, they're using their mother's maiden name, their cat's birthday as the password, and then they're writing it on, because even then they can't remember it, and they're writing it on a Post-it note and putting it on the screen, or they're putting it under their desk blotter. That is not secure. Use LastPass. They won't even have the password. They can't share it. They can't write it down. It just logs them in. LastPass.com/twit. Thank you, LastPass. We're so glad you gave us the wherewithal to do this show, and name the studio, and keep Mary Jo and Paul Thurrott and fine wine and cigars.
And beer.
And beer. LastPass.com/twit. Let's start with Paul and your tip of the week. More Xbox content. Woo!
Yeah, I do have a lot of Xbox. Before I get to that, though, I should point out this news story. This is important. Planters announced today that Mr. Peanut is dead.
Oh, no.
What?
At 104 after a heroic act.
What did he do?
He saved two people from falling off of a cliff. He will be remembered as the legume who always brought people together for nutty adventures.
Did he drive the Planters
his,
Peanut Mobile off the cliff to save them, or how did that?
They were in the Peanut Mobile, and they swerved to avoid an armadillo, and they fell off the cliff, and they were hanging on a tree, but the branch was going to crack. So he fell to prevent the branch from cracking and fell to his death.
Paul, are you making this up?
I think he is.
No, it's an ad. And apparently his funeral will be broadcasted during the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, of course. It's a Super Bowl ad. Mr. Peanut, R.I. Peanut.
Wow. 104, though. He had a good life.
He had a good life.
Yeah, he had a good run.
It's pretty
good for a peanut.
What? Okay. There is no truth to the rumor that he is in hell now.
Okay.
Apparently, he saved the lives of Wesley Snipes and Matt Walsh as his car, the Nutmobile, exploded. This is from Wikipedia. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Yep. The reactions are coming in from all over the world.
Actually, if you go over to, I guess, Explore, you should be able to find the video.
Okay. This is not the nutcracker you're looking for.
No.
We'll save that. I don't want to spoil the Super Bowl for you.
No. Anyway.
Nothing could spoil my Super Bowl. We got our 49ers.
I just thought that was
there.
amusing.
We're very happy. I'll be watching.
Peanuts are a very healthy snack.
They are legumes.
Okay. They are, yeah. All right. So, two game-related tips and apps this week. So, tip of the week is
somebody in the chat room. Wait a minute. Somebody in the chat room just said, "Seems like a publicity stunt."
No,
yeah.
You think?
No. He really saved two people in a heroic act.
What about the armadillo? That's what I want.
The armadillo is okay. No armadillos were harmed.
I don't want to be a cynic here, but that sounds like a publicity stunt.
Listen, this is why this podcast is so popular. It's the
we tell the truth when others won't.
Right.
All right.
Anywho, you may have seen occasionally Xbox Game Pass for console has been $1, for a month, so you can kind of try it out. That deal is still available if you want to get the ultimate version, which works across console and PC. However, Microsoft is having a promotion right now where you can get Xbox Game Pass for PC for 3 months for just $1. And if you haven't tried it, I mean, it's $1. So this is a great opportunity to actually give this thing a shot. So just something to know about. And as for the app pick, it's actually a game. Actually, it's technically, I guess, 4 games. But in the build-up to Half-Life Alyx, which is the VR-based prequel to the Half-Life games, Valve is making available through Steam the original Half-Life, Half-Life 2, and then Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and 2, available for free. But for free, I mean it's free to play. Once through March. So once that date comes and goes, they're not free anymore. But you can play them for now if you haven't played them or you haven't played them in a while, which is probably more likely, and you want to kind of catch yourself up on the storyline. I would say the Half-Life 2 might be the most important one for that. You can do that until they ship Half-Life Alyx. So that's kind of cool. Those are some of the best games ever made. You know?
Yeah.
And you should own them. But if you don't,
Half-Life is so scary.
Play.
It's so fun.
I don't understand how Half-Life 2 was never made into a movie. It is so perfectly, obviously, it's like a movie.
Huh. Never really thought of it that way.
And I hear Half-Life 2. I'm sorry, just real quick. There's little blurpy sounds, like, you know, the futuristic things are flying around and stuff.
Yeah.
If you play Call of Duty Black Ops 4, that sound is in the game all the time. You can hear it. It's like blooper. It's like a burp. It's like a burp. And every time I hear it,
they reused it.
I think of Half-Life 2. Like, it's obviously it's the same sound. It's perfect.
I mean, I don't know if there's anybody in the world who hasn't played them, but if you haven't, this is your chance.
I know. Well, but it hasn't played them in a while too. Like the last.
Yeah, I haven't played them in ages.
It's been a long time. They're still fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Like they're still today. They're fantastic.
My kid plays Gary's mod all the time.
Yeah.
How about an Enterprise? Yeah, kids today. How about an Enterprise?
You know, it's not free though. It's Counter-Strike's always free. Never mind.
Team Fortress 2 forever. Now, Mary Jo Foley, who's baffled by all of this.
I am.
Give us the Enterprise pick of the week.
It's tough to come after Half-Life 2, whatever Half-Life 2 is, but I've got something better.
Think
I'm
Cuphead
sure.
with face-sucking creatures.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. It's a little bit like that.
This is the equivalent of that. It's called BizTalk Server 2020.
Wow.
BizTalk Server is an enterprise application integration server. That's a mouthful, but it's actually a really big deal of an on-prem product that matters to many enterprises still. And the new version, 2020, just started hitting the volume licensing channels about a week ago. So what's interesting in BizTalk 2020? They've got lots of connectors to things in Azure. They've got connectors to Logic Apps, Service Bus, Event Hubs. They work with Visual Studio Team Services. They support some of the latest editions of various Microsoft products like SQL Server 2019, Visual Studio 2019, Windows Server 2019. There's so much more. I could go on as long as the Xbox segment usually does, but I will just let you know that it's out there and Microsoft's documentation now has all the features listed. So go check it out.
But that's not all.
That's not all. I have another enterprise pick.
Yes.
Because you know what? We got to balance out all this gaming content.
Yes.
What?
So my second enterprise pick is that Microsoft is finally adding a new Azure region in Israel. Believe it or not, there is no Microsoft Cloud region in Israel right now. I was surprised by that because Microsoft has been in Israel a long time and has a big Israeli R&D center. But today they announced they will be adding a Microsoft region in 2021 for Azure, and they will be following that up with Office 365 availability there. And the reason this is interesting is some people in Israel want to keep their data in Israel. My mom calling.
Oh,
no.
Hi, Mom.
No, I'm not going to answer.
Sorry, my daughter
She's going
was.
to ask me a computer
I can't find the browser.
I know.
Where's
That's going to have to happen later.
internet?
Yeah. Back to Israel.
Where's that
Anyways,
E thing?
It's a
this
C.
is good.
Okay.
As of the addition of this region, Microsoft now has 56 Azure regions worldwide that have been announced or are operational. That's my second pick.
Yes, a good pick indeed, but not as good In fact,
As the
I love this
beer.
name, the beer. I don't know how well it tastes, but it sure got a great name. Our beer pick of the week.
Yes, beer pick of the week is called Trillium Cutting Tiles Mosaic Double Dry Hopped Double IPA. What does all that
it's like
mean?
a Microsoft
Twice
name.
as bitter as Paul.
2020 R2.
Service Pack 2.
Wow.
So here's things to know.
Yes.
If you have never heard of Trillium and you're a craft beer person, what rock are you living under?
Shame on you.
They're based in Boston, and they're probably one of the most famous craft breweries, at least for IPA fans in the United States. The reason I've never made Trillium a beer pick before is it's really hard to get their beer unless you're in the Boston area. But it seems as if this is starting to change, and they're broadening their distribution. We just started getting some Trillium on tap in New York, I think for the first time ever. So this particular beer pick, the Cutting Tiles Mosaic DDH, is a really, really good double IPA. So many double IPAs are either too sweet or too bitter, but this one goes right down the middle, and it has all the nice tropical and stone fruits that you would love in your double IPA. But it's balanced, I would say. It's not too much of anything. It is 8.4%. You're not going to drink a whole lot of them. But if you have a chance to try any Trillium beers and you have not, and you're an IPA fan, I would highly recommend them.
Cutting, does the name have some meaning to you, or is it just a bunch of words?
Cutting Tiles.
stitched
Yeah,
together?
I don't know why they call it Cutting Tiles. I know that's I think it's a single hop series name that they have at Trillium. And DDH, double dry hop, just means they add hops, even more hops when they're making the beer, like they doubly hop it.
I understand all of those words. I just don't understand them together.
In context, yeah, that's a little odd.
Yeah.
All right.
I would just say, you like double IPAs, look for Trillium, or single IPAs, any IPAs.
Any IPA.
That's why I moved from Boston.
See, you had to leave Boston, so you wouldn't see that. Right?
First
Actually, Trillium is really widely regarded.
They are highly regarded.
Yeah. First they take the babe, then they take a beer. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the thrilling, gripping edition you have just heard of Windows Weekly, starring Mary Jo Foley of allaboutmicrosoft.com, her ZDNet blog. Paul Thurrott of Thurrott.com, his blog. And, of course, his books are at leanpub.com. We do the show together every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. If you tune in during the show production, you can watch it live at twit.tv/live or listen live. We have audio and video streams. You can also get on-demand versions of the show after the fact at twit.tv/WW or subscribe in your favorite podcatcher. That way you'll get the episode the minute it's available. If you do go to the website, would you do me a favor and take the survey? There's a link right on the front page there, or you can just go to twit.to/survey20. We do this once a year to get to know you a little bit better. We don't track you. We can't, but we also don't want to. We know privacy is important to you. So we give you a chance voluntarily, no requirement. You don't have to answer any questions you're not comfortable with, and we certainly don't keep the information about you personally. It's all in aggregate, but it helps us sell ads and actually make shows that fit your needs. So if you
you don't install a browser extension or something?
I don't turn your save search to Bing or anything like that. Twit.to/survey20. We want to get the Windows Weekly crowd on record. So we usually we do this about once a year. We usually get around 20 or 30,000 people, which is more than enough to give us a pretty good idea of who's watching, who's listening. So thank you. And sometimes people say, well, you didn't ask me this or that. They really try to keep the questions limited to just a few that we need, things that we need to know. And so don't feel slighted if the question doesn't reflect. Somebody said, well, I listen in 23 different ways. That's okay. We just want to know the number one way. We don't really have time to go through all 23. We know that. We know that. We're not oversimplifying. We are simplifying. That kind of thing. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mary Jo. We will see you next week on Windows Weekly.